Boy of the Month. Mom met Brock about a year and a half into our enrollment at Christian Life School. His front story was born again, wearing a serviceable beard, a pharmacist, owning a house down by the river. Combined, this made Brock a godly man for our mother to ruth it up to, she being so wretched, a single and separated mother of six. Allegedly, even Brock, this burly, towering figure, had also been a kid once, just another wee lad growing up in the urban of BC's capital, Victoria. Overruled by an iron fisted old man who'd fought in both world wars and lived to never talk about it, Brock had come of age smack dab in the middle of two brothers and two sisters. His father was known to punish, not to hug, a stark figure of a male who tasted human slaughter and volunteered to go back. As for his mother, she'd known her place. According to Brock's official Christian testimony, the alluring smoke of the marijuana bud had fully seduced him shortly after he had escaped his family home. Moving off Vancouver Island to a smaller islet in the Salish Sea, he'd hunkered down, grown his own dope, and rocked a chill vibe in general. But then, that slow road to Damascus moment came. The truth, shining like a beacon, was sent forth in the shape of an explosion of gasoline. Taking the lazy man's way to boost a fire, Brock had dumped the accelerant onto his smoldering brush pile in his backyard, harum scarum. Slow to react, having just imbibed the devil's weed, he could only watch aghast, his gas to flabber, as the flaming claws burst forth to snatch him. At the very last instant, a miraculous gust of wind altered the fireball's deadly course. All of Brock, but for his bushy eyebrows, was spared. There was no doubt. Surely the same Jesus Christ before whom his mother once prostrated had just saved him with his holy puff. Heaven was for real, and Brock right there hit his knees. Reborn, he mostly quit the weed, covered his pockmarks in tidy facial hair, and switched to dealing legal drugs. Moving back over to Van Isle, north to Courtney soon after, he went church shopping in his quest to find the one that best matched his composite sketch of God. Eventually, he was led to meet our mother at a Bible study for Christian singles, and with the only dating criterion being that they both believed in Jesus, the fact they were also unattached meant it was pretty much a wrap. They were two holy vessels to be yoked by the love of Christ. However, for Brock and Mom to enter into the covenant preordained by no less than the creator and savior of the universe, first, my mother had to wrangle a justifiable divorce from Dirk. A scriptural loophole had to be found. Other congregational members who'd encountered this same dilemma offered their updated interpretations on the book of Matthew, chapter 19, verse 9, with varying degrees of confidence. Therein, Jesus decreed an adulterous wife could be cast off lawfully in the eyes of the Lord. The advanced level question as to whether his breakup rule applied when it was the husband doing the straying remained hotly contested. Some of the congregates' prayers had been answered pro equal rights, others came back as strictly against. Let's pray over it together ourselves, and then we'll know for sure, our mother submitted to Brock. He nodded approvingly. Solemnly, they bowed their heads, clasped their hands atop the Holy Scriptures, and implored the Prince of Peace to give them guidance through his Spirit. I was never married in the eyes of the Lord, our mother proclaimed enthusiastically. The Lord told me the same, Brock confirmed with authority. They sent Dirk the divorce papers. Mrs. Brock Greif was announced to the well-attended wedding hall less than 6 months later, a mere 5 days after her union with Dirk McLean was legally severed and spiritually cauterized. It was me, almost 8 years old, who carefully carried the ring pillow up the aisle, my arm linked with Chloe's. All us kids dressed together in pieced together formal wear, brother Roman propped up front in a body cast from having recently been hit by a car. Despite the festive occasion, though, mostly what I felt was uneasy. Following the reception, we were instructed to call Brock Daddy. His 6-bedroom riverside house became our new home, where Daddy, quickly established that he was the deciding vote on everything. He liked things done a certain way, and as the ordained head of the household, so it had to be. His new authority over us he buttressed with the knockout argument of a rounded mahogany paddle. Prominently displayed hanging by the door of the master bedroom, it was a constant reminder of the last and the next spanking. A word to the wise is sufficient, he liked to quote after hitting us. Sometimes he'd first get us to write out essays on the topic as to why we deserved exoneration. What we'd come up with often made him laugh, but seldom made him merciful. Quite simply, it was impossible to know what might spiral Daddy off next, leading Roman and me into developing the high tech strategy of wearing every pair of our third hand underwear we owned at all times. One day, Roman developed a painful rash on his butt, perhaps from layering too much ginch over the target area far too long. Dutifully, Mummy applied cream to his stinging bum to ease the discomfort. That same evening, Roman and I tucked happily into our shared bed for the night, excited to enjoy a Keith Green tape on low, followed by a little bit of Amy Grant. Exactly 1 minute past quiet time, Daddy smashed through our bedroom door and blasted on the light, cutting dead our hysterical giggling over Amy's song about a fat baby. Declaring we'd done it now, Brock sprinted off to grab the paddle, returning in a frenzied sense of mission. Propping Roman up naked against the wall, he having gone to bed undressed, the better to let his ravaged bum skin heal, Daddy's first whack splattered my brother's ointment. 4 more blows spanked hard into his new son's tender flesh, Roman crying out each time. But I knew it was his failure to hold it in, however, that hurt more than any physical pain. When my turn came to be beaten, Brock's risen blood pressure failed to twig I wore an extra 5 pairs of underwear, and as he struck my gaunt-sheet pajamas, I snuck Roman our shared grin of triumph over the man. He managed a slight smile for my win, despite his own rashed and cracking butt. A couple weeks later, on a day trip south to visit our new uncles and aunts in Victoria, I forgot my beloved Teddy Jr. in the grassy courtyard of the care home where Brock's handicapped younger sister lived. The realization of the loss hit me at the same time we reached our family van parked out front. Daddy could not have given less of a toss. There was traffic to beat, and wasting a precious 2 minutes over a toy blue dog mattering only to a child wasn't going to happen. Devastated and terrified, because I knew he meant it, I pleaded from a visceral level I was surprised I had inside of me. There was a thudding pause as Mommy, the neck, declined to move Daddy, the head, and away from the curb we pulled. It was strongly suggested I put a cork in it, or you know what. Retreating into a silence beyond feelings was beginning to feel like the only viable option. Another few months later, Daddy playfully walked Roman and me out to sit on his back patio. It being a warm, end of summer day in the early afternoon, I plopped myself down onto the deck's patio table and took in the glittering green shades of the nearby public park. The wildly groomed acreage of trees and trails had proven a great place to not be home until dark since we'd moved in, and it was already packed with new forts, bluffs, and hideouts. A fast-flowing river of rocky rapids danced past the back edge of Brock's property, separating the park side from the First Nations reserve we weren't allowed to enter. So, boys, Daddy opened once he had us facing him properly. I dared a tentative smile. Our second earthly father did exhibit bouts of generosity on occasion, sometimes for us doing well in Christian life, other times to all appearances randomly. There had been Mount Washington cross-country ski trips and crazy carpeting, an entire day splashing down at the South Island's water slide park, buying a previously well-loved trampoline for the backyard, cooking shepherd's pie, his signature dish, and giving us that sweet rod hockey game, the big one, last Christmas. For now, though, neither Roman nor I said anything, never certain what talking might mean to whatever came next. I've been thinking over August, Daddy continued, his long head held lofty. I wriggled in my seat. We hadn't been in trouble for at least a while. Perhaps this meant a new inner tube to ride the river's rapids, or maybe a film in actual Technicolor tonight. And it was a close decision between you two. Daddy's voice shifted deeper. Very close. I cast my gaze more animatedly, hoping to glimpse a deflated tube hidden somewhere nearby. Daddy's hand firmly squeezed my shoulder. You were far moodier than I like, he said, his grip released. I swallowed. But in the end, you, Roman, Rock directed his full bearing at my brother. You were the worst behaved, so you're getting a spanking. Roman stared. I blinked. Guilty relief overtook me. You can leave, John. Daddy concluded my conclusion. My recent rechristening took me a second to register. Remembering that I was John now, mechanically I stood up from the table, stepped away, and in that same moment, something struck Roman straight in the cortex. The chair he'd been sitting in went crashing to the deck. On his feet and already airborne, Roman cleared the 4-foot railing with room to spare and plummeted down its twice as high outer drop. Landing on the grass below, still spinning, he rolled out of it like a seasoned paratrooper and carried on, creating a streak across the lawn he'd dutifully mowed just the day before. He vanished into the leafy park. You see, Brock said with a snort, quickly deducing pursuit was useless, especially with his bad back. I knew he deserved it. I opted to slink away as the safest bet. Some hours of day into night later, Roman's still not resurfaced. The rest of us bundled together for our nightly Bible reading on the living room couch. Around the middle of our first chapter, the slow, creaky opening of the house's heavy front door had us all looking up in unison. Wordlessly, we watched Roman leaning in carefully to peer through the narrow gap. When his strained expression alighted on our 7 sets of staring eyeballs, the noise that escaped from my brother's soul must have given every animal in the vicinity a spinal chill. The crack snapped shut, Roman's footfalls scurrying into dusk. Mark Brock grunted as the only one who could, and restuck his head into the Bible. Our lesson on the prodigal son continued. Sometime after that, Mommy was allowed to go search for Roman, calling out that for real, he was safe. You won't get spanked, she sang out into the dark. Daddy knows he caught you off guard. Alone in the dark and encroaching cold, Roman gave himself up to her repeated promises of clemency. He was promptly locked in one of the windowless basement rooms for the next 3 days. And with school not having started yet, he could be left there conveniently straight through, given no toys to play with but for the Bible. While he was languishing down below in isolation, failing to understand exactly what he'd done to be there, we upstairs were given the joyous news. A new sibling was on the way. Unto Jesus all the glory, cried Mommy and Daddy. Another child born blessed into a Christian home.